To use a BrainStoke term, double click.
That's a Tomism. If you're playing BrainStoke bingo, you can mark
Double
that
click.
off. A double click.
Yeah.
Is that the free space? Double click.
Yes.
All right.
Welcome to BrainStoke. We are in studio today. Very excited for this. We have Karson Kinikini who is here with us. And Karson just so happens to be one of the original founders of Aspire Counseling and Aspire Medical, which is a newly startup company in the last couple of years doing med management specifically for mental health. And between those two companies, Aspire Counseling and Aspire Medical, they are the keynote sponsors, the platinum, diamond, and all things sponsors.
That sounds fancy.
Did you know that?
BrainStoke. Good job, Karson. We'll send the bill.
Right on.
No, we're excited because we are in their offices. Aspire Counseling and Aspire Medical have been so kind over the last, 4 or 5 episodes. We're blending in visits to their offices. We happen to be in Layton at their location here. And so it's cool because we're gonna weave some stories in of a founder of a mental health company who's going to talk a little bit about struggle and stoke of his life, also being an entrepreneur, a therapist, and we're going to dive into a number of different topics. And so welcome, Karson.
Thank you very much.
Let me give a little more background just in terms of, our relationship. Karson started Aspire Counseling a number of years ago, also with his wife, also with John Howard and Shelly Howard, amazing people. My wife, Liza, and I have gotten to know the Howards and Kinikinis because my wife is also a therapist. So what's cool is that watching her grow in her career really started because of Karson. So even though John has had a significant impact in mentoring her, years ago, my family lived in the same neighborhood as the Kinikinis, and we got to know them, very well. And that was kind of the early years of married life with children. And so it seemed like our neighborhood was a zombie land, young parents just trying to keep up. And what's cool is that Karson was, he was in mental health, and in my opinion at the time, was providing a lot of stability, a lot of kind of advice just within the neighborhood. And it was awesome. And that stuck with Liza and I over the years. And so about 5 years ago, when she said, I want to follow my dream and go back to school, get a master's, and become a therapist. And everything went back to, hey, I'm going to reach out to the Kinikinis because Karson's the man. He's the one that I think I need to reach out to and get some advice on. And so long story short, Liza got a master's. She became a therapist. She did her internship and her credentialing hours with Aspire Counseling. And all of that led us, to a certain extent to here tonight, to talk to you. So thank you, Karson. Personally, this has been an amazing journey for our family, and it's been connected to you. And so it's awesome.
It's been a wonderful one. When Liza had come kind of expressing interest in mental health, it was an immediate, oh my gosh, she'd be so awesome. And she has been.
Yeah, she absolutely loves it.
Yeah.
So there are most days I'm stoked about this life. There are some days where I think my son, James, who's 12, will say things like, Mom, stop therapizing me. What do you do? Like, he thinks that there's just Jedi mind tricks going on all the time now because he's a therapist. Anyway, it's awesome. It's been a pleasure to see it all. So, Karson, kick us off, if you don't mind. Give us a little bit of your background. Tell us about you, your journey, growing up and your family now, and how that leads into Aspire.
Great. Thank you. So, I'm Karson Kinikini. I am a clinical mental health counselor, licensed here in Utah, and I've been practicing for, I don't track time well, but I memorized this year that it's 17 years that I've been doing that, and I have to update this as time goes on. but I really enjoy working with people. I always have. That kind of evolved over time and the way that would kind of be implemented in my life. But I really, really enjoy working with people and helping them. Counseling is something that I think came pretty naturally to me. My mom was somebody who would always have people come up and talk to her. She was not a licensed therapist, but people came to her and talked with her. And I think that some of that kind of just rubbed off on me in being someone who could listen and then also share insights and tools and strategies to kind of help people improve the functioning or feeling in their life. That's kind of what my approach to therapy is, that people come because something isn't feeling or functioning in the way that they would like it to. And so I view my role as being able to be someone who can help explore with that person what isn't functioning so well, or what isn't feeling the way that you would like it to feel, and why. And there can be a lot of different reasons why that takes place. It can be something that is situational, that needs a plan and some action steps to address. It can be something that is more thought process oriented, where we self-sabotage or we create problems, Chicken Little syndrome, where we see things as being more problematic than maybe they are. And we can address those in therapy by confronting those and getting ourselves back into healthier thinking. I sometimes call it an extreme word makeover, where we find ourselves confronting the everything, nothing, everybody, nobodies, and saying, wait a second, is that accurate? Or is that something that we could challenge and bring into more reality? Additionally, there are also times where the functioning or feeling of somebody's life is impacted by something that may be happening biologically, neurochemically in their body, which is why Aspire Medical became something that we determined was necessary to kind of help give a more inclusive and wraparound type of service that would assist people in feeling and functioning better.
Yeah, that's awesome. Go back with me. I'm intrigued because in as much as I spend time with you, I don't necessarily know your upbringing. And so you mentioned your mom, and your mom being a natural therapist, a people person, connecting with people. I've seen Liza in our life for years, kind of in that role. People were attracted to her. She was approachable, non-judgmental in a way where people would just approach her, and out of nowhere, all of a sudden, she's very involved. No, I shouldn't say involved. She was very informed. They confided in her very intimate details of their lives. Mm-hmm. Was that your mom too? You saw?
Yep. In fact, as you were talking and I was thinking about Liza, I was like, Liza believes in people, which is an element I think that most people who are good listeners, good with people, it's in great part to their belief in people. We believe in people, their capacity. We believe in them to feel better, to function better. We believe in their ability to thrive in life and rise above challenges or disadvantages that may have come into their life as no result of their own choices, or sometimes as a result of some of their choices. But we believe that people can improve what's happening in their life. That was my mom. That's Liza. That's me. It's a quality that's essential. It's like what I was saying that when Liza was expressing interest in that, I was like, oh, you'd be so good. It was because I knew she believed in people. People feel that.
When did you know you wanted to be in the mental health?
Oh, that's such a funny question, because I kind of evolved from wanting to be a family physician, then a surgeon. I got kind of greedy for a bit, wanted to create surgical instrumentations, patent them, and make $1 gazillion. And then I forsook all of that and decided to become a seminary teacher. Did that for 2.5 years. Really liked it. Was going to go into that permanently, but the hiring was supposed to be the best, and then 9/11 happened, and they hired 2 people in all of all of the seminary system, and I was not one of those 2. And so that's actually the moment I was like, well, I've got to do something. And and I first decided that I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I liked working with people, and I kind of figured out that like talking with them was helpful. And so I did a master's program in educational counseling, and figured out partway in that had way too much paperwork for me. So after finishing that program, I transitioned into a second master's bridge program into clinical mental health counseling. And boy, when I when I really started getting into that, it really was in my practicum and intern portion that I realized that this was home. This was what I was really meant to be doing. So,
Was there something specific that happened, whether something you learned about, or were you doing, a clinical, experience where you were actually interacting with someone in a therapeutic way where you're like, yeah, this is it?
yeah, I was definitely in the therapy room,
Okay.
working with clients, and just really seeing people have a return to joy in their lives, to see them, be able to smile again, to see them be able to be brave and courageous and start to seek their dreams and their goals again. I think that's where for me that stoke comes from. Mental health can be kind of draining at times for those employed in it. One of the things that I seek to help my interns learn, those that I supervise, is that it can sometimes be draining, but can also be rejuvenating. It can be energizing. There's sometimes when I leave the therapy office after a long day and I feel so alive because I'm so excited about what's happening in people's lives.
How did you, or did you ever feel the stigma around mental health as you were entering that field? And maybe how did you overcome those thoughts if they existed?
You bet. So I didn't personally feel a stigma myself as far as like, mental health was bad, but I knew that in society that was kind of perceived that way.
Mm-hmm.
I have this joke that I like to make that therapists were ranked right above the proctologist as professionals, healthcare providers that you would introduce friends and family to. And we have risen on that list.
Yeah.
To where people are oftentimes like, oh my gosh, this is my therapist,
Street cred.
Yeah.
street cred. And
Yeah.
I think that's such a wonderful thing. In the 17 years that I've been practicing, I've seen that shift a lot.
I bet.
And it's something that I'm stoked about it because it means that people are able to receive the help that they've needed. It's not that, like, people have said, hey, have mental health needs risen, so much? And I'm like, well, I think there's some to be said for that. Like with COVID, there was this, spike of utilization. I think people were more stressed. Yeah. Definitely environmental influences. But I think a lot of it is just that we're willing now to recognize the need and address the need. Whereas before, people suffered in silence. Sometimes when I'm taking a family history and doing a little genogram, I'll ask if there's a history of like mental health, depression, anxiety, any diagnoses in mental health that are part of that family history. And a lot of times the first response was no. And then they'd quiet down for a second and they'd be like, but I had a whole bunch of uncles that were alcoholics, which is kind of an indicator. I mean, it's not, proof, but it's an indicator that there was likely a lot of self-medication that was happening. They were suffering in silence. Yeah. They were coping, a bottle at a time. And oftentimes in secret. And now I think we're dealing with things more out in the open, and boy, that is such a great thing.
Isn't that awesome? I mean, I think that's so great. I got to go back, if you don't mind, to use a BrainStoke term, double click.
That's a Tom Tomism. If you're playing BrainStoke bingo, you can mark
Double
that
click.
off. Double
Right on.
click.
Yeah.
Is that the free space? Double click.
Yes.
All right.
You mentioned there a couple things that stand out to me. So, those who listen to this or watch this, they're going to chime in on a couple things. One, they can't see your flip flops.
Can I put it on camera?
Yep, yep. I'm not sure where that just
Oh, there it
showed
is.
up, but
Yeah.
it's
Right
it's over there.
I was told you may not even have shoes on.
They frequently, like right now, my feet are hot despite the fact that I have on flip flops. So I am going to loosen those.
What does that say about your genogram?
Well, one would help explain my last name. Sorry, that's an alarm.
Good, man.
My last name Kinikini is a Tongan last name.
Okay.
From the island of Tonga.
Oh, you way.
You got it. My dad was born and raised in Tonga, and immigrated to the U.S. as an adult. And my mom is from Malad, Idaho, where she was born. And so, like my flip flops, my hot feet, despite only being in flip flops, is kind of an indicator. In Hawaii, they call that they have a song about luau feet, and they're big and wide. They don't fit easily in shoes.
Hence the flip flops. I
Hence the
got
flip flops. Yeah.
So I bring it up because in office, Karson may or may not ever have shoes on, and got a maybe a Hawaiian shirt vibe. In his office, I see weights. You're working out when you can in between clients. But you mentioned something a couple minutes ago about rejuvenating at times, after a long day of meeting with people. And, the more I am married to a therapist and the more I spend time in meetings at Aspire, it's a heavy life. I mean, it's in my opinion, I now put mental health therapists or mental health professionals on the same level as like first responders for major tragedies that go on in the world. Because of what's going on in people's lives, this is some of the most tragic stuff that goes on that therapists are sitting with. So what is it about your vibe, no shoes, flip-flops, Hawaiian shirts, and the ability to stay positive that it rejuvenates you to spend that time? So talk about that.
Okay.
Where does that come from?
So it can be heavy. When I listen to the stories that some of the first responders share, and I hear when they let down the walls that kind of guard their tender emotions, and they'll talk about some of the things that have caused them to have the very human responses of wanting to shrink away, run away from situations, not necessarily fear-based ones, but rather trauma-based ones. Those things can be heavy. I don't know how exactly. I don't think I ever learned this like in a textbook or anything. Maybe I learned it from my mom. I don't know, but I have come to understand that as a therapist, when I'm in the room with somebody, I am with them and I can sit with them and I can hold that experience with them. But it's not mine. When they walk out the door, that experience is also going to walk with them. What my hope is that also what they walk out the door with is a feeling of relief from being able to share it and not live with it in secrecy or shame or fears of disgust, etc., as well as maybe some tools and some skills that they can utilize to resolve or to better cope with those things. So for me, I have just kind of this. I've learned this. When I say learned, it's always been there, but I'm able to know that my client's leaving with the same struggles that they entered with, but they're better prepared. And they have hope. That's a huge thing.
That the win?
That's the win. So you talked about like my flip flops. I have so many clients that when they get in the room with me, they kick off their shoes.
I love that.
They kick off their shoes. They sit cross-legged on the couch with their feet up on the couch, and they're comfortable. They can be themselves. Having that experience in comfort is huge. Like the weights that are in my office, I do lift them. That's the only way I get to the gym, because I had to bring the gym to the office. And I'm not super great at it, but it's actually also for the clients. I have clients sit down at the bench and lift some weights, so that they have a chance to get some of that motion going. It can be cathartic as an activity. It can also be something that starts to give them some movement and some motivation in their lives. So I want them to, for me, therapy is an action process, not just a talk about it process. It's a process of actively beginning to do and to create something different in life. If something's happened in life that's not the way we want it to be, we need to introduce change. And sometimes that change, it's going to be a lot bigger than just simply sitting down and, pumping out 3 sets of 10 reps. It's going to be starting with that, but then it's taking another task and then doing that same process where they challenge those extreme words in their heads, and they're like, wait a second, I just said never, and that's not accurate. And they do that with repetition so that their brain gets stronger, right? That their resiliency gets stronger.
It feels like everything you're talking about is really innate in you. Like, this is how you grew up. This is what you were taught by your parents. Is that safe to say?
Yeah. It's funny. So I'm a child of divorced home.
Okay.
My parents divorced when I was a couple of months old, because of problems with domestic violence. And at 2 months, my mom, my brother, and myself were a guest in a home that didn't belong to them. We classify that now as homelessness. And my mom was resilient. She figured out ways to secure employment that would allow her to, she was a licensed teacher, not a therapist, but a licensed teacher. But she actually taught preschool, because she could take us to preschool. And she managed some apartments on the side and secured free housing for us. And so she was very resourceful, very resilient. So yeah, I think some of those things I just learned growing up, watching her. Yeah.
I didn't know that. It's now connecting dots in my mind, just about our relationship. So being resourceful, being resilient, those are skills that, in my opinion, are required for entrepreneurship. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that I was raised, parents who, had a mantra of just, we're going to figure this out and we're going to make it work and we're going to take the risk and, we're just going to keep taking it until it works, and we're just going to work our way into it. So I watch you and your wife, Marlene, who happens to be the president of Aspire Counseling. When I met Marlene, I was shocked, not because I didn't think she was very sharp, but I was shocked that this woman was running an organization, this dynamic, growing this fast, the things, and there's other team members, but your wife is brilliant businesswoman. And she has incredible capability and work ethic. And between the two of you, it seems like that you are just going to kind of take on the world. So talk about that a little bit, about being, young marrieds leading into you being, a therapist. At what point did, hey, let's take this on and it's one thing to become a therapist. It's another one to say, we're going to start our own company. We're going to grow this thing. So talk about how, that story and the lead in, and maybe draw back, if you don't mind, on your mom and the resiliency, that kind of mindset of, hey, no one's going to give it to us. We just got to figure it out.
Yeah. So literally from the moment that I was fully licensed, I already knew I wanted to be in a private practice, and something beyond a private practice. So I actually had a practice in Bountiful and was growing that. It was increasing, and I was talking with a therapist that I was practicing with, sharing a common waiting area, and I started to share this idea of, like, I want to take over this whole building. And it was kind of a dumpy building. My office was like in the basement, and it was a little bit depressing to walk down there. There wasn't light, etc. It was a little bit less pleasant. I'll say that it was a lot less pleasant than my present office.
Yeah.
But I wanted to take over this whole building, and it wasn't really about. It wasn't about greed or like money. It was about, like, I wanted people to be receiving mental health care in a very effective way, and I wanted to pull together a group of people who had that same passion. They believed in people. They honed their skills so that they could help people. And anyway, the friend that I was talking with, he kind of got wide-eyed, like, and I was like, I kind of knew at that moment. I was like, I won't be able to do that with this friend, and that was actually I knew John Howard from LDS Family Services, where we were both working part-time as therapists. He had a private practice as well, but we were both working there part-time. And I asked John about some office space in Layton. Like, I was like, hey, I think I'm going to put an office in Layton. Are you liking it here? And you know, what's your thought? And he was like, hey, I've got a space. I want you to come be in my office. And so we went and looked at it, Marlene and I, and then we opened it in that space, and then I shared that same kind of vision or thought with John, and he was like, I've been thinking the same type of thing, and so we started talking, and then on January 1st, and again, I don't track time well, but it was January 1st, I think 12 years ago, maybe. Somebody can fact check.
Yeah.
But it was January 1st, and Marlene and I and John and Shelley got together. We'd done some preparatory work, but we really pounded out the plan for Aspire. And that plan was that we have this unwavering belief in people, that we love people. We believe in them. We believe in their innate capacity as a human, as a child of God, for greatness and for happiness, and that we know that life is tough and it gives you hard things. But you also are given these tools of grit or intelligence, or even like winning personality. Like, there's some gifts that we have, and everybody has some. And as we utilize those gifts, we start to find that we have a way to kind of find solutions to things in our lives. Sometimes our gifts are helping other people. And when that is our gift, along with it comes a bit of a responsibility to exercise that in ways that come and bring blessings into other people's lives, that alleviate suffering, that push aside stigmas and help us get to a place where it's okay to talk about the happenings of our life, whatever they happen to be.
Give us a gift of your therapy, the therapeutic side, something that you recognize in yourself that, man, I got this. This is a gift that I have. Give us one from an entrepreneur, a business owner side, and then give us another one, if you don't mind, 3 gifts. And what about being a father? Okay.
So from a therapist side, I tell my clients that I am a pushy therapist. I give them a forewarning, and most of them know that. Most of them also come if they've been a word of mouth referral. They come and they're like, "Yeah, they told me you wouldn't have shoes on." But I'm a pushy therapist. I don't enjoy seeing people suffer, and so when I see suffering, I want to do something about it, and I'll push them, not beyond their capacity, their ability. If they're like, I can't do this right now, I'm like, okay, I'll back off a little bit, but we'll come back when it's time, because there is time for stuff, right? We have to address things at some point. So that's a gift. I don't mind pushing. Sometimes that's not easy for people. From an entrepreneurial side, I am a dreamer and I figure out stuff. I have zero IT training.
What's amazing to me on the entrepreneurial, the business owner side, is that when I first met you all, I was intrigued to kind of know, like, how does the week go? And the week typically goes like, full days of therapy, Monday through Friday, maybe even some on the weekend. But if you're not doing therapy, you and Marlene and the Howards are all still working long days through the weekend to bootstrap it, to make it all happen. It's pretty remarkable that way. Your dreamer dreamed something up that's pretty remarkable. It's grown into, 6 offices, a couple other locations, and how many therapists or clinicians now are within?
Oh, you know what? That's a Marlene question. You nailed it on the head that she is awesome at that logistical part. I'm actually really good at the part that I do. I'm not great at that part of. I know we're 100 and something.
Yeah. Last time I asked, I think it was 130 something.
Yeah.
From Draper north to Riverdale and a number of places in between. And so when we talk about bootstrapping, I just want listeners to know that it's not like, we have 5 therapists type of a thing. By count, I was intrigued about this, so I did a little bit of research. I think that Aspire is the largest private provider of mental health in the state of Utah. There are other large hospital systems that are not private who employ quite a few folks, but Aspire Counseling and Medical are now the largest employer of mental health professionals in Utah.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Yeah.
So you had that dream, right? To accomplish that. How does that feel?
You know what? My initial dream was only one building, and it was kind of a dumpy one. So it feels great.
He does it.
Yeah, it feels fantastic.
Yeah.
And certainly it's something that one of the things that I've learned is that when you bring hope and dreamers and workers and people who believe in each other and have heart together, you end up with it's the idea that the sum is more than the whole is more than the sum of its parts, and I think that's so true when we look at what has happened, with Aspire over these 12 years. I look at it sometimes in a little bit of disbelief, like, really, like we.
How have you managed to keep your mission? You had a personal mission that you wanted to help and to love and to provide people with a reason to believe. Yeah. How have you managed to keep that as you've grown from just your single office to now 137 different therapists doing the same thing?
I would say a big part of it is just staying true to principles. Our missions were to bless the lives of Heavenly Father's children in the community, to bless the lives of the therapists. That's part of our model, is to create a place where therapists can practice and receive the best training and support and also make a good living. The way that we've kind of designed our business plan has helped people to improve that quality of life. So that was our second, and then the third was to blessed the lives of those who were referring entities. That included doctors' offices, many wonderful partners that we've had over the years, as well as like bishops from the LDS Church, where have been people that oftentimes come to us with needs that they're not sure how to meet. A bishop is just as likely to be an ice cream salesman as they are to be a mental health therapist. And so, as a layman clergy, they're oftentimes faced with dilemmas that they're like, wow, I don't know what to do.
Just not qualified for.
And, the desire is there, but sometimes they're just like, I don't know. That's outside of my area of knowledge. And so anyway, we've sought to seek to meet those needs by staying true to those principles. And we view the people in the community as treasured people, right? They have value, and they have needs, and many times they're in situations where they're suffering, and so they need that help and support. We value those referring entities that are again looking for, how do I help? How do I best help this person? And then we value those therapists because they're part of this team that again adds to that vision and grows it beyond anything we could do individually on our own.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Even hearing you describe that, my mind goes to sitting in meetings, hearing you talk about employees, hearing you talk about therapists, making sure that the training is top notch so that the therapists feel like they're growing, that they're not being monetized, but that they're growing in their own careers. It's been pretty cool. And then, names like Dr. Jason Hoagland, like an incredible pediatrician, Kaysville, Tanner Clinic, a person who over his career, I don't know how many hundreds, if not thousands of people he's referred to Aspire. And that trusted relationship, that he has and vice versa, in terms of his practice. And so that network of lots of other professionals who care for people has created quite a network of making sure that people who value care and, taking care of people, that becomes this kind of natural network of, helping. And it's been awesome. Cool to see.
Totally.
Talk about the gifts of being a father.
Yeah. You know what? We do the best we can, right? My mom did the best she could. My dad did the best he could. And so we have to kind of accept what those are. I have sought to be a good father as well. I haven't always made, people think that a therapist is going to always just be the model parent. That's not true.
Liza,
we're human. We're human before we're a therapist. Can I say something just to parents, to evaluate? One of the things that I've learned is that as parents, we have to be careful not to base our assessment of ourselves as a parent based on the outcomes of our children. Meaning, if we've gone through the process, we've taught them something, and they've picked it up, and they graduate from college today, those are awesome moments. Does that mean we're a good parent? Well, we could support it with that, but I think it also is something that we have to say, hey, who went to class? Who, in her case, who went and got the scholarships? Who did the homework assignments? Who wrote the papers? Who did their student teaching? It wasn't me. And so I can't base it even off the positives. But one of the things that oftentimes as parents we struggle with is we see where our children struggle, and we personalize it. Sometimes we push them on things that that actually has a counterproductive effect, because we're hoping for them to succeed. We want them to, and when they're not, maybe we show our disappointment, etc., instead of showing our love and support, and our understanding of maybe why that didn't happen the way they hoped. Yeah.
Is there a tool to help parents do that? I mean, I assume you explain that to them, but then they've got to now figure out how to implement that.
Yeah.
How do they do that?
So yeah, learning tools like I would say it's developing the skill of being able to separate our own achievements from those of our children, right? When my daughter bought a car at 15 with cash, was that my achievement? No. But I've got to be able to recognize that, right? What was my achievement? My achievement was I taught them some principles of truth about money. And if I taught them, whether they did it or not, I actually had a win. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
If they did it, sure, I feel happy, but I can't own their success. That's theirs. It belongs to them. And so I think more than anything, it's building the skill of boundaries, of recognizing what belongs to who, right?
Yeah.
I listened to this brilliant neuroscientist recently, and he said something interesting. He said, for you parents out there, you need to know that the research says that kids are born with 4,000 traits. I don't know if you've read this or heard this. 4,000 traits. So calm down. Your likelihood of being able to parent them into something else they're not is highly unlikely. You can guide, you can help, you can support, you can teach, but they are coming with 4,000 individualized traits when they're born. And he said, now, for those of you that heard that, and that sounds like, well, that's hopeless. He said the flip side is that they come with 4,000 traits, and they're largely going to dictate their own, direction of their life. And so you should feel at ease. It should also relieve some stressors that you have on whether or not they turn out to be the next president of the United States or a failure living in a van down by the river, whatever that is. Like, just understand within context of what a role of a parent is. And so if you don't mind just kind of double clicking, on this parent thing a little bit more, what are you seeing in your practice, whether through the lens of a child, a teenager, or through parents that are coming in? Where are situations where you want to put your arms around them and use that gift as a therapist and say what?
So, like, to parents?
Yep.
Yeah. To help them kind of recognize that our role is to be a teacher, right? We're on a pathway that our children will walk. We've been down it further, so of course we know it better. Sometimes we expect that our children will just walk down that path, and that they're just going to do it because they've seen us do it. That's not how children learn. A researcher named Jean Piaget recognized that one of the stages of learning is a sensory motor stage, and it's learning by doing. This is why, like, at 0 to 2, when babies are crawling and figuring out this world around them that they can now move and interact with, as they start crawling and they get access to things, they'll take those things and they'll put it in their mouth because they want to see what that experience is, right? They'll bump it into their mouth or their head. They'll take two objects and bump them together. And so they're experimenting, they're learning by doing. And so some things we have to have, like, we can instruct our kids, but they may not really get it until they get a chance to do it. And they may not learn it from their first experience of doing it. In fact, they probably won't. If they have ADHD like me, they're going to probably have to do it hundreds or even thousands of times before they figure it out.
Totally.
So
repetition.
So again, our role as parents, we can teach, we can instruct, we can guide, but I would say that our biggest role is to love. And we can teach our kid, and if they don't do it right, how do we approach it? Do we get frustrated? Do we get mad at them? Or do we talk to them and say, well, how did that go? What was that like? What did you like about, the outcome of this, and maybe what did you not? Earlier this week, my son, my youngest, he'll be 15 on the 15th. We'll have lived in that house for 3 years. And he has kind of this oddly shaped room. It has this window bench in it and the little nook out there, and it's got like two gables that are outside of his room. Anyway, he came to me and my wife a couple of weeks ago, and he said, I want to turn that into my bed. And we were like, it's not big enough, because it's not. It was a window bench, and he's like, no, I want to like turn it into my bed. And so he came with this idea of what he wanted, and we talked it over, and like, he wants to do something. Let's figure out how to help facilitate that. So I sat down with him. We drew up some plans. I kind of explained the project, and I had to go to work, and so I left him with a power tool. It's a smart idea, right?
I love
And
experiences.
And when I came back, he had cut the sheetrock higher than he needed to. And I had a bad dad moment. I was like, Kyler, you cut it too high. And then I caught myself, because I realized I had that awareness that we were talking about, building that skill, which we still work on, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? We can fix it. We can figure it out. We can patch it. And it's just going to take longer. It's okay. And then as we went through the project, we actually figured out a way. We didn't have to patch it. We put beadboard up. It covered it.
Nice.
And it looks even better. He's loving it. But it was something that when I stopped my first reaction, which that's one of the secrets to parenting, is that a lot of times our first reaction, it's our programmed response that probably came from childhood, and it may not have been the healthiest of situations in which we learned how to do that. But as soon as I stopped my first reaction, and then I just started to talk with him about hey, you know what? This actually lets us see these 2x4s. Well, it gives us plenty of room. We can totally take care of that. There was this return of this kid that was eager to learn. And anyway, it's not 100% finished, but it actually looks awesome. And he designed it so that it had this place that has this opening that he can crawl underneath and get into. He said he wanted to do that because when he was little, he had this captain's bed with a little and a door that he could crawl underneath and hide in or put stuff in. And so he wanted to recreate that at 15. I thought that was pretty fun. But when we mostly finished it, and he bought himself with his cleaning money a purple mattress.
Yeah.
He bought his own, and he put it up. We unwrapped it, and we cut the plastic off. And I don't know if anybody's done that, but it like goes
5 times as big.
Gross.
Yeah, at least it was. He started like jumping up and down, and he's like, "Science, science!" He was so excited, and then he walked over and he gave me a hug, and he said, "Thanks, Dad," and it made all of the work and the lumber and the mistakes, etc., totally worth it. If it wasn't a success, the importance is to still love, right? That was where I got off track for a second, is that I put the outcome before the relationship, the love. And to get back on track, I just had to get myself to a place that was better. Once I was there, I could operate again in the capacity that I needed to as a parent.
What others would you think about, in terms of, the parenting and child relationship that you would see that's going on? When I think about the topics of the day, mental health, most people I think would think about anxiety, depression, OCD, ADHD. There's a significant focus in the state of Utah on suicide, awareness and prevention. Freestyle for a minute. Anything that you're passionate about or that you're thinking about, on any of those topics.
Oh, man, you give that to an ADHD brain. Run all over the place with
Talk about ADHD.
Okay.
Just because you've been boisterous about it.
Yeah.
Talk about that in your own experience and what you're seeing, in terms of, your clinical experience.
ADHD in the DSM-5 was combined. ADHD and ADD were combined together. We still treat them the same, and we still like the way we addressed them in the DSM-4 was that we just differentiated between hyperactive impulsive type versus the inattentive type. So there's different expressions of ADHD. Not all of the ADHD symptoms are the same, and not everybody has all of them. And sometimes the way that they are expressed can vary from person to person. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, the long term of it, is indicating that there can be problems with attention deficit or inattentiveness, where the change or shift of focus is problematic. So it's not that a person can't focus, it's actually sometimes that they're focused on everything. There's a jet flying overhead right now. I'm very, very conscious of it. Even with these headphones on, my brain, and it's partly, I love jets. When we moved to Davis County and the jets would fly overhead, every time they'd fly over, I wanted to stand up, put my hand over my heart, say the Pledge of Allegiance. I just love it. So
very patriotic.
Very patriotic. Sometimes the problem with ADHD is that you're actually paying attention to everything, or trying to, and you're shifting, and it's hard to stay focused on an item. It's kind of funny to watch me do yard projects, because I will start on one, and then all of a sudden I see something, and I'm over here. I actually was doing this yesterday with my second child, my oldest son, and we were digging up post holes to get ready for a new deck. And I had to cut something with a chainsaw, some old posts, and so I did that. And then I saw a branch on our cherry tree.
Squirrel.
I started walking over to it, and then I caught myself, and I said, "Oh, I'm getting distracted from the task at hand." And I pointed out to my son, who actually part of our conversation while we were digging was I said, "Do you think you have ADHD?" I've known he's had ADHD for a long time. He's been resistant to it, and he's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Huh, so do I." And again, kind of just showing him this demonstration of how I'm a pretty productive person, but showing him how my productivity was being limited by this ADHD, this disability. In some ways it's a disability, in some ways it's a superpower for me. I feel like it makes me very creative. It helps me, it gives me a lot of energy to work on things and ideas and that, but it can also distract the heck out of me. So showing him that, I think was part of that. As parents, again, if we get away from that idea of outcomes, I have to show them that I'm perfect. There's not as much, like, we don't have to show the image. So for me, showing him that was so valuable, because that showed him that I can understand when he may struggle with focus or productivity.
I think that's powerful. I really do. In transparency, for our listeners, I talked about it a little bit. I have ADHD. And as a child, what that meant to me is that I was so self-conscious. I did not believe I could learn. I believed I was stupid. I was the kid taken out of class, all growing up. And so I hated school. Yeah. My self-esteem was so low in terms of learning. School was a train wreck for a while. Church, even a step lower, right? Now you put an even quiet, like the environment with ADHD. And I just throw that out there to parents so that you can think through that, just in terms of the environmental situation that is going on. Those are huge factors with an ADHD brain and how it works and how they develop and their, just how it impacts a life is so significant. I also figured out how to compensate for that. In my life, I have 3 things that are like my buddies. My phone that I take notes on incessantly. People think that I'm like, a little crazy with sticky notes. They're everywhere. I have a whole system for sticky notes. And then I have a hard journal of just writing. And when you described there for a second about kind of getting your blood boils when someone interrupts you, if I'm in my entrepreneur creative, when I'm writing, when I'm typing, when I'm really into something, my brain goes so deep into it and so hyper-focused. And when I get interrupted,
Volcano.
Oh, it's not good at home. I mean, there is a negative side to it. On the flip side, as strange as this sounds, I attribute the companies that I've helped start, build, and sell, I directly correlated to ADHD.
Yeah.
I mean, when it's on, it's game on. And, it's pretty remarkable. And so parents, if you have a child like this, or if you're a teenager, and you're listening, if you're seeing or hearing some of those attributes that you may struggle with, know that if you get some tools, man, it's going to be the coolest thing on the planet.
And I think that's one of the wonderful things about that reducing that we've seen happen of the stigma of mental health and being able to acknowledge struggles and be able to help understand like why behaviors are sometimes present and what it takes for us to overcome those. Understanding that, then we have some respect for the efforts that go into it, right? So a lot of these things are physically invisible, but are noticeable behaviorally. And so when people can better understand it, then they can have more compassion and understanding in how they approach that. I think that can help us in our parenting too. If we can understand what's happening with my child, why are they, rebellious, or why are they, sad and isolative, and if we can start to put words to it and have some understanding of what's happening, then we can better address it.
How often, as a therapist, when you're sitting in the room with someone, do you become vulnerable about your history? Do you do that often?
So that's an awesome question. I'm glad you asked it, because if there's any students or mental health practitioners here, I want you to listen to this. But everybody listen to it. I found a study in the last year that was really cool. What it did is it actually examined 30 other studies in which they were assessing when is self-disclosure in therapy positive and negative. What are the boundaries of that? And what the study found in analyzing the findings of 30 other studies was that too little self-disclosure is bad. Too much self-disclosure is bad. So too little self-disclosure is not helpful, because if somebody's coming in, they're bringing in their personal problems, and they're talking to a concrete person who doesn't feel, it's very challenging for somebody to connect in that way. If that person comes in and they're talking to somebody, and instead they end up talking about the therapist and their problems, that's also not very helpful. That's, in fact, not very helpful. It's very unhelpful. But there's this healthy medium, a place where disclosure given for the purpose of helping somebody connect, help them normalize their experience, etc. So I have zero problem letting clients know that I struggle with some things with ADHD. I figure they're going to notice anyway, so I just get it out of the way and tell them.
I think it's got to be pretty valuable. I mean, from my perspective, I think there's got to be a connection made when hey, he's like me.
Yeah,
he deals with the same crap I deal with.
That normalization and the ability to see that and say, hey, there's positive in it as well. There's struggle. And there's ways that it will, you'll have to work to overcome, and what that looks like in your particular instance will vary potentially from my own. But there's going to be some positives as well, and that might vary from my own as well. Hopefully it makes you a gazillion dollars.
Yeah.
Freestyle. Any other topic to close this off?
Any other topic?
Think a little bit about, you're super positive. That's who you are. But if you were going to talk about something that tugs at your heart, something that, it's deep in there, and from a clinical therapist perspective, where you think, yeah, this gets to me, it gets at me in terms of what I'm seeing socially, in our world today. I mean, there's plenty of tough stuff that's going on. Any thoughts there?
Yeah. And it's going to be kind of general. As you were asking that question, my mind went through all these different things, and then I found this common thread. And the things that it went through were multitudinous. It was about, challenges of kind of a chronic nature. If somebody has been depressed for a long time, or they've had ADHD, and they realize, wow, this is around for the long haul, or they've struggled in their relationships, or they're struggling to understand concepts about gender and sexuality, or struggling with a behavior like addiction, whether that's substance or behavioral like gambling, or a sexual addiction. A lot of times people feel a lack or a loss of hope because it's been going on for a long time, and the ability to entertain the idea that things can be better, things can be different, are they seem far off. Oftentimes it's this type of thing plus another stressor that leads to suicidal thinking. Suicidal thinking is oftentimes a thought of escape rather than a thought of actual desire to die. But they want to escape. And if they feel a disappearing of that hope that something can be different, the thing that I would want people to know is that time changes everything. It changes rocks. It changes canyons that, once were seabeds, and with enough time, it turned into something as wondrous as the Grand Canyon. Time will change everything. There's a Buddhist concept called impermanence, which is a really interesting concept, and it's this idea, the acceptance that nothing is permanent. Mm-hmm. Nothing is going to stay the same always, right? But that it will change. And so the idea of knowing that right now, maybe our life is flooded with something that seems unsustainable. But the knowledge that will not stay that way and feel that way always is huge. Mindfulness practices, there's a technique called leaves on a stream, where you imagine leaves on a stream. And in the fall, boy, that stream is going to be covered with leaves. And at different parts of the year, there might be some here and there, and there's going to be some times where it's absolutely clear of them. And what actually is taking place and changing that are situational factors like the season, but also the fact that the flow of that river, which would be representative of time, is bringing about change. So if something is going to be consistent, and we sometimes have to accept that. ADHD is a permanent part of my being. But I've come to accept that because I've also found that besides some of the leaves that I don't like, I like some of the leaves. Some of the leaves are awesome. And I've also found that I can do things that help me have better relationships with people because I learned how to come out of hyperfocus with a non-bearish presentation. I learned to use my electronic brain that's my phone, by the way, in case anybody thought it was talk about something different.
AI.
Yeah. But I use my phone to remind me about things that I want to make sure that the importance that they actually have to me are remembered by my brain because of a cue. It's utilizing and harnessing technology. So anyway, that answer. I guess it was a free open question. Hopefully that was
Of course it did. That was a beautiful analogy with leaves on the stream.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Where did that come from again?
It's a mindfulness technique. So again, it really is based on that idea, the Buddhist concept of impermanence.
Yeah. Kars, what's on your playlist right now?
What's not on my playlist right now? ADHD. I have diverse musical tastes.
When you're out there on that really loud motorcycle that I know you love, what are you listening to? ZZ Top?
You know what? It doesn't have to be like, sometimes it's classical music.
Yeah.
I actually almost always listen to stuff on shuffle.
Yeah.
Because I need that variety. And it'll be, Schubert 1 minute, and then it will be, Bob Marley, and then it will be, a hair band from the 80s. And so, variety is really, it's classically ADHD.
Yeah.
ADHD is this case of dopamine deficiency, and so we're seeking that. And so for me, like, if it's predictable, it's less satisfying to me, and so I love variety.
I do too.
I think we're learning that about you.
Yeah.
Our cycling group always is like, dude, what's with you and music? And it's like, that's how my brain works, man. If I'm on a bike, I'm happy. But a bike and tunes, heaven.
Right.
Yeah, it's another level.
Karson, you're doing good work, man. Everything you've done, everything you've created for the last 17 years is really pretty awesome. So congrats to you and your wife and the Howards. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
I think that's, I just feel the energy that we're, talking about, and we're all involved in good work, and in different ways. Sometimes it's professionally, and sometimes it's just what is our passion, and it's something that we throw ourselves at.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
Yeah.
Would you like to leave with any parting thoughts for family? One of the cool things that I've recognized in the short number of episodes that we've done, after a couple of these that we did, I realized how cool it is for a family to have a video and audio journal of someone, in your life that they care about, your kids or your wife or whoever, to hear some of that live. It's not necessarily in maybe some of the traditional settings, at a family birthday party or Christmas or whatever. So anything that you would like to say to anyone special in your life, family, mom, sibling, whatever, go for it.
I've learned a lot of things from a lot of people in my life. But my wife, Marlene, is one who I've learned. She helped me with ADHD. I guess it's maybe an expression of ADHD and then just growing up poor. She taught me that you take time and you use some money. And it doesn't matter how much you have, you just use some of it to create memories, to create experiences, and that's been super helpful to me. That would be one thing I would just say is, for your families, identify what you can do. My wife grew up camping because that was something that they could do, and they would take the time and go and camp. And she doesn't really like camping, but she liked camping with them, which is that's very telling, right?
Yeah.
We were just talking with her mom today at the graduation in July. I think it's July 24th. I think that's right. But there's a reservation to go camping, and we will go. We actually probably will not sleep there because we've kind of wimped out on that part. But we will go up and we will drive back and forth because it's something that is great to do, right? That being said, like in my family, I grew up working, and I have learned it's part, you can see it in what we've done with our children, and as I worked with them. Like, I've probably spent 8 years of this time period on 2 nights a week, driving kids to and from the offices before they could drive. I love that we have only one non-driver. But that was like, we learned to work together. That's how my family, we experienced some love. We did other things too. We relaxed. My stepdad taught me like to enjoy running, which is kind of an odd behavior for Tongans. Unless it's on a football field.
Yeah.
The distance running, and I know it's odd. But take time to do things that bond and create the opportunities to love and instruct. And I think that's, again, we don't have to be perfect parents. Our failures are learning opportunities, and if we just address them that way, and we're open and honest with our kids about that, and we're like, hey, let's try this again. Let's try and see if we can do this. Then it just becomes like a revamp of that now we're looking to create a better outcome when maybe things don't go so well. But take those times to love and create opportunities together. And I'll be forever grateful to Marlene for teaching me that.
It's awesome. Thank you for being here, for all that you do. It truly is inspiring to watch, what you have built and the impact on, lives. There's a lot of lives that have been impacted. And I love that Aspire's mantra is an unwavering belief in people. And I see that, so much now being close to the Aspire family. It's cool.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
You bet.
You've had your daily dose.
Be stoked.
That's right.